And that's the thing too, like we'll have guys that will go until they pass out underwater, but you only get 2 shallow water blackouts before they get rid of you. So you have to weigh all these things into that whole, like, I need to last as well as perform.
Rescue Swimmer Mindset, episode 59. I'm your host, Vince. We have a very good episode today. I loved it because we've been talking this one up for a while. And you know, when we talk them up, that's usually because there's something good at the end of the line. Today, we had a conversation with the one, the only, the man who was once a Coast Guard helicopter rescue swimmer, but is now converted into an Air Force Pararescue Jumper. Yes. We finally have him on the podcast. We're going to talk to him today about his journey, about the transition between rescue swimmer life, PJ life. What was harder? That's a real question we wanted answers to. So we went down that rabbit hole. That's our guest today. So before we do that, let's talk about a little bit what you can do to help out the rescue swimmer mindset, keep through this next year as we grow together as a community. What are we doing as far as our community goes? We are coming out, Cody and I, for a very first joint program called the Perfect Form Masterclass. That's going to be a live class. So signups are already filling up. We're going to try to minimize how many we can actually have on the masterclass. So if we need to do 2 classes, we'll do 2 classes. But for now, it's getting full, but you have some slots. So Perfect Form Masterclass, go on the rescueswimmermindset.com. And what that is, it's going to be us breaking down in excruciatingly detailed form with pictures, videos, and explanations by us as, elite military operators, how to swim efficiently. So we're going to break down how your hand enters the water, how your elbow should be, how your body position should be, the tube as we call it in swimming, where you're trying to keep your body in a line in a tube as you cut through the water. So we're going to go over freestyle stroke on the surface, but we're also going to really dive into the military type swimming, which includes fins, how to fin properly on the surface and underwater. So breaking down the form for all you guys that are trying to improve your swim times and your swim performance. Because the reality is you can only have so much grittiness when it comes to swimming. It's not about your mental drive as much as it is your efficiency. Basically, we're going to teach you how to be truly efficient, and that way you can crush it in any type of elite military program. So that way you can also interact with us and ask us questions, because it's going to be live. We're going to be there as long as you want. We'll answer rescue swimmer questions. We'll answer swimming questions, surface question, and underwater proficiency questions. So it's going to be a detailed class, 3 hours. Check that out, rescueswimmermindset.com. And that's the Perfect Form Masterclass coming out at the end of January. So sign up now as we fill up, or else you will not be in the live course. Lastly, 𝐻𝐢𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻. I think I'm going to do the final cutoff of the 𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻 show that's going to be also hosted on the Rescue Swimmer Mindset. I'm only going to keep it to 10 episodes. So after 10 episodes, I'm going to only have 𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻 episodes on the 𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻 channel. So please do subscribe. Do the same thing. Apple Podcasts, 𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻. So Wilderness Entertainment, 𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻. We've had some great guests. We talked about Leave No Trace. So the environmental impact of being in the outdoors and how, as a recreationalist, you can really be a good outdoorsman to educate others, and things that you may or may not have known that you've been doing to, just preserve the environment for years to come. That's something we've talked about with a NOLS master educator recently. We've had a lot of survival stories, helicopter crash. We're going to have a plane crash coming up soon, talking about the survival process of that. That was in Washington. Pretty gnarly story. We had some jamoke, as we like to say, that took a little skiff and cruised from the coast of Washington all the way to Alaska. So that was another pretty gnarly story. And canoe races, we're going to have some more mountaineer survival stories and a lot of rock climbers. Just those athletic, gritty folks. So that's enough with that. 𝐻𝐻𝐴𝐻𝐷𝐻𝐻 podcast, Perfect Form program. That's going to be on the rescueswimmermindset.com, and rate and review this podcast. Thank you very much. Without further ado, the rescue swimmer turned PJ, Ty Gaenzle. All right, Ty Gaenzle, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem, man.
We've heard about you for quite a long time, and I think starting all the way back to when we were even in rescue swimmer school, Cody and I, we always heard about this like legendary swimmer that went the PJ route and just crushed it. And since then, with different various guests, actually Brad Pigage, and we actually talked with some PJs. We went on the BAPJ podcast, and I believe that they were talking about you as well and how well you performed going through that whole PJ pipeline. So it's great to finally have you on the show to really dive into your brain after talking about you for so long.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, good to be on.
Great. So why don't we start with your swimmer career, and then we'll transition into your current career as an Air Force PJ. When were you a swimmer? Basically, when did you graduate swimmer school?
Yeah, basically started swimmer school in 2010, and then I got out roughly August 2013, and then started the PJ pipeline January 2014.
Oh, wow. So you basically did you do the bare minimum of a rescue swimmer tour before going PJ, or did you transition before you were even completed?
Yeah, I was, so I joined the Coast Guard January 2008, and then finished my 6-year commitment pretty much, and I just went TDY, the Advanced Rescue Swimmer School, met some PJs, and pretty much that's how that ball got rolling. Found out about Alaska Air National Guard and the 212th Rescue Squadron there, and gosh, they just hook, line, and sinker grabbed me, and that was that.
What do you mean by what attracted you to the Air Force PJs in Advanced Rescue Swimmer School?
They had stories. It was just different, doing the swimmer gig. It's all civil SAR, and then I know the PJs, talking to them up in Alaska, they do civil search and rescue all the time as well. And then, I've always kind of wondered what the grass is like, doing like combat deployments and everything like that. So I don't know, just spiked my interest, and everything that they do, of course, jumping, diving, etc. And then honestly, that's pretty much all it took. I was just ready for a change,
That's pretty cool. So which swimmer number were you?
797.
797, right on. So yeah, like almost 100 before us. That's really cool. So you completed your tour as a swimmer, and where did you serve for that one tour?
Yeah, I was in Astoria, Oregon, at the 60 unit there.
That's the dream station spot, in my opinion. Yeah,
it was a good spot.
You just got that out of A school, huh? Did you graduate top of the class? Because I assume that's a top pick, right?
I did. I ended up getting the honor grad, and then just got that pick. It was pretty sweet.
Yeah. Did you get some pretty good cases in Astoria then?
I did. I had honestly a great. It was, a small shop. It's only 8 guys, and most of them were older guys, and they're just like, you want to stand duty as much as you want, here you go. And you're not going to get missions or SAR cases unless you stand duty. So I was pretty fortunate to get the few in that 3 years there.
What is the typical kind of search and rescue in Astoria? What are the cases that you guys mostly deal with?
You do your standard, offshore medevacs or sailing vessels in distress. But mostly it was, you did like inland search and rescue. So like loggers, people on the coastal trails in the mountains there. And then every once in a while you do something in the Cascades, like someone gets a predicament and there's no other assets that can go get them. So the Coast Guard gets the call.
What is the process of like search and rescue when you're dealing with a hiker? Because the visibility, like in the trees, especially in those, those big tree lines in those mountains, How do you locate them? What's the system in place for that?
We do like contour searches, where you start, say, at the top of a mountain, and you just kind of go around and down until you find something. And usually the people we do find were, headlamps or like a beacon in the middle of the night or some sort of strobe light, or in the daytime, if just waving like a bright colored piece of clothing. A little bit more difficult, but you can spot them pretty easily that way.
So what, they just try to find a clearing and make themselves most visible?
Yeah, pretty much.
Because I was always a fan, like growing up, to those survivor type movies. And one movie I always remembered was, I think, The Edge. Remember that one with like Anthony Hopkins and like the Kodiak bear.
Yeah.
And like same thing. I think that at one point they could have been seen, but they were just in those trees. And even if you're out in a clearing, somebody's really kind of have to have a pretty pinned down location as to where you are, because having operated search and rescue, you're trying to look as much as you can, but your eye doesn't really pick up that much, especially like you have to be pretty low to see anything. And the lower you are, then at that point you're not covering as much of a pattern. So
yeah, absolutely. It's taxing, Yeah.
Did you get any cool cases in for hikers and recreationalists out there?
Yeah, quite a bit. My first search and rescue case was a couple teenagers on the Columbia River Gorge, just free climbing, scrambling on that third, fourth class terrain, that sketchy chassis stuff. And his buddy ended up slipping, falling like 100 feet, and then landed in a little cliffed out section with a bunch of snags and some trees that hang over the cliff there. It happened kind of like in the end of the day and then into night, and then the volunteer high angle teams couldn't get to him, so they ended up calling the Coast Guard, and that was like July 2011. So we ended up doing like a vertical surface hoisting at night, and yeah, it was good. It was a good one.
That was one of your first cases?
That was my first case, yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty great one. What are the high angle teams qualified to do? Are they also accessing via air?
No, they aren't, and specifically that team that was doing it. They just, go by ground and try to hike up to the top to probably rappel, secure the victim, then get them out via rope systems, or they try to climb to the victim and get them out that way and do a lower from there. But the terrain was just it's pretty difficult for them, so they just couldn't do it. And it was nighttime, so they opted. Sometimes a helicopter is the safest way to do things sometimes.
Not just that, it's like so hard. As a rock climber yourself, like if you're trying to pin somebody down that's below you on a cliff face, maybe you'll see their headlamps, but doubtful, because the way the cliff is, they might be under a bulge. You're not going to see them. I actually remember I was doing a little climbing in Australia, and we got caught in one of the worst windstorms I've ever experienced, just being out and about in civilian life anywhere, like on a beach, anywhere in my life. I've never felt a wind like that, but I was on I think it was like a 15 pitch climb. And I'm up there, and this just shows like the community of rock climbers, and especially in Australia, and this is the Blue Mountains area. I thought it was so kind of them. This one friend who was in like the camp community drove out the 45 minutes to this multi-pitch area where we were. So this like big cliff. He hiked out, I believe, 40 minutes to the top, threw a rope, but he described throwing the rope like down to try to start rappelling and I guess try to aid us, right? Because he knew what climb we were on at least, right? So he knew where, like above where he was, because he'd done the climb. So he throws the rope, but the rope, instead of going down, just goes straight up in the air, and it's just staying there. Like it's just in the wind staying. And he's like, well,
really strong winds.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm not doing this. So like he went back. He's like, I'll try again in the morning. And he described being in his van within like the seclusion of these trees in a forest. His van was rocking back and forth. That's within the shelter of the trees. So like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. I had some wind PTSD. But that just goes again to show like he never saw us. Right. So, and he knew exactly where we were. But in that case, for that low angle team, I would assume, it's almost that's a pretty hard mission to complete. That said, like, who does the high angle team work for? Is that Park Services or?
No, I think the ones that we dealt with were just volunteers that come out of whatever county in Oregon, and they just, they usually get the call, and then they all have to gather up and then drive out. So it's usually a delayed response because they're just volunteers, So yeah, no like dedicated, I get paid to do this every day, they're just volunteers.
That's God's work in my opinion. Same type of people that put up rock climbs and stuff, just doing it for the kindness, and giving back. That's really incredible.
Yeah.
Why don't let's get back into your story. So how old are you when you decide you're gonna go to the PJ pipeline?
I think I was 25 years old. Just did my third AHARS course, or Advanced Rescue Swimmer course. And then there was more PJs there, talked to him even more. And then I was like, gosh, I just felt the need to do more. I just felt, in my opinion, just felt like stagnant where I was. I wanted to learn and do more and see if the grass was greener. And, I ended up trying out for the 212th Rescue Squadron in Alaska, and fortunately got a slot. And then, gosh, that was in May of 2013, and I got out August of 2013, and so pretty quick turnaround.
For sure. Well, first of all, let's break down a couple of things you said. You went to the Advanced Helicopter Rescue Swimmer School 3 times within that 3 years of service. That's pretty cool. Like, most swimmers have not gone that often. Well, I mean, you were there, right? The school is there.
Yeah.
So they're like, yeah, just go ahead.
Yeah, there's like a slot. There's a slot available. So they just be like, anyone from the shop want to go? And I mean, my first time, the weather wasn't too bad. And then my second time, that's when they're like, hey, a slot's available. And the weather was kicking. It was like 20, 25 foot seas, like hailing inside of the helicopter. So it was a really cool week. It was one of those humbling weeks.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Do you get rocked a little bit? Is that
Oh
what you mean
yeah,
by humbling?
yeah.
A little yard sale of equipment. That's cool. Okay. So you're 25, and then you said you went to this Alaska squadron. How does that operate? I thought like all the PJs had to go through this specific, I don't even know where the PJ pipeline is.
Yeah.
How does that work? You say you went to a squadron.
So usually the Air National Guard or Air Reserve, those squadrons are all like half part-timers, half full-timers. So half active duty, half part-timers. And they have their own process where they kind of vet who they want to hire. In pretty much just a tryout. You just go out, and it's just like a mini selection. They just you just do your standard PT test at the beginning, and then right after the PT test, they just run you through a whole, like, I don't know, 8 to 12 hours of just events, just really just kicking your butt and doing different events to see how well you handle stress. It's just like any selection program. They just consolidate it into a day, really. And then they do like a hiring process at the end. So, you're wearing a suit and tie, and then you just have a bunch of PJs, pararescuemen, and combat rescue officers just sitting around a table asking you questions like, why should we hire you? And that was probably the hardest part,
Yeah, what's
trying
the
to
answer
convince
to that
them. You just hope that they liked your answers, and they obviously look at your performance, see if you're just did everything with the smile on your face and stuff like that. But that's pretty much how the tryout I went to worked, and I'm pretty sure it's similar across the different PJ Air Guard units.
Interesting. So
yeah,
once you passed your interview, then what?
So they let me know about a month after, yes, we'd like to hire you. There's a couple guys in front of you, so you may have to wait a little bit. So I ended up starting the process to get out of the Coast Guard. My enlistment was up towards the end of the year anyway. I mean, everyone at Astoria was super pumped and helpful. They're all about that type of stuff anyway. So yeah, the command there just like pushed my paperwork and just sent me packing with a smile on their face. They're pretty excited. And then I had to do the whole in-processing MEPS deal with the Air National Guard. So that was, that's just one of those mind-numbing processes. But once I got it going, I was literally for the first day of selection in pararescue NDOC course was the first day I wore a Air Force uniform. So that was pretty funny as well.
Whoa. Okay, so you go through, that's funny. First of all, why do you have to go through MEPS again? Because you're already in the military. And
yeah, it's I don't know if it's to cover their own tracks, but they still have to do. Actually, you have to do a couple extra things for like their flight physical, like chest X-rays and a bunch of other stuff. It's just one of those things that you just have to pay the bills,
Yeah.
So
one of the fun things I recall going through the medical process of qualifying for a swimmer. And I don't know if you had to go through this, because I've heard some swimmers had not had to do this. But when I was in my airman program in Hawaii, you got to go through your final checks before your flight ready, before they even send you to swimmer school. And one of the things they have you do is they have you read like an article or something. It's like a paragraph from a journal, and you start reading it. And at least my doctor didn't really give me a briefing as to what was going to happen. He's like, all right, no matter what happens, if there's an interruption, you just start over and reread the paragraph. So you're like actively reading this paragraph. Let's say I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. And then the doctor will go, "What's that?" He'll like super aggressively go, "What's that?" And you go, "I don't know what's happening." And you start again. "I pledge allegiance to the flag of the," and it, like, especially if you slightly pause or stutter, he'll be like, "Do it again." You have to just do it again. I don't think
sounds like he was messing with you.
I know. Maybe it's because I was Canadian. He knew. He's like, let's see how this Frenchie can handle like communications in a helicopter, right? I remember that just being an entertaining process, because I was smirking every time he would yell at me. I was like, what is happening?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, all right. So you're in your Air Force uniform now, and where are you now? Are you now you're at the pipeline, or how does this operate?
You're talking about when I started training?
Yeah.
Pretty much when you start the pararescue pipeline, it's a little different now. Most programs change throughout the years, but I started in the pararescue development course. It's kind of like it's like an airman program, but 2 weeks.
Okay.
And the different thing there is it's pretty much the same as the airman program, except you start with like 130 dudes, give or take 10 or so. But it's a lot of people, and you're all together, you're all in it. And then that was probably the biggest difference between the selection programs, was like the mass amount of people that you have to interact with, and you have to deal with them. And being prior service, they usually put all the prior service guys like in charge, like the non-commissioned officer in charge or something like that. So you have to not only get through the training yourself and do well, you have to manage all these people, and it's kind of a goat rope a little bit.
What was your approach in leadership in that position?
Sounds ridiculous, but in that point of time, just try to just lead by example. And if you're doing everything right and you're trying to crush it, pretty much everyone follows whoever does that. So at that point in time, that's all I could do, because I'm still trying to, do the selection course as well.
So let's just backtrack, because I think the process continuously changes, and I'm curious as to how you ended up in that position. So you went through MEPS, eventually they gave you a uniform, but you skip over Air Force Bootcamp. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's
correct.
cool. And then what? They ship you straight to this 2-week other selection process / like airman program. And where was this?
That was in Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, right on. So you finish your MEPS, and then basically you finish whatever process you had, and they just shipped you there with your uniform?
Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
Yeah.
All right. So you ship there, and then you successfully complete your 2-week process. Would you say that was pretty challenging in itself?
I mean, the standards weren't horrendous, but just like any selection process, the people who don't make it through that process are the ones who typically are fearing the next event. They're like always fearing failure. So they either talk themselves out of it. So say they did marginal on a Thursday, Friday, they're already, that entire night when they go to sleep, this is pretty standard. They would just fear the next day's events. So they had already quit in their mind before really the next day even happened, before they even woke up. So they already had it in their mind that they weren't going to do it. And I'd say that was the majority of people who didn't make it. And then after that 2-week process, that little mini airman program, I'd say we finished with 80 dudes total from like 130. So that's pretty much the number we started with for Pararescue NDOC, which was another 9 weeks after that.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? Like in all those selection processes, there's always those individuals that are fully physically capable, right? They're crushing it.
Yeah.
And everyone
Yeah.
that is in their leadership and through their selection process is like, this guy is a stud. He's going to fly through the training. And then within a couple days of attending whatever the hardcore of the nitty gritty selection process, I think, they just get in their head too much of the longevity of it. And maybe just the pressure of it, right? Not just looking at each event as like its own little challenge. They're thinking about the next event, and therefore the event they're currently doing, they kind of botch.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, having been through 2 of those programs, what would you tell those individuals if they're trying to go again? Like, what kind of recommendation would you give them to try to get out of their head?
I mean, just focus on each individual event as it comes. There's different approaches to that. Some guys would be like, just make it to breakfast and then make it to lunch, make it to the end of the day, just pretty much meal to meal. Just whatever you're going to do, no matter what you do, it's going to be awful, So if you just accept that and know that however you want to do it, like, hey, I'm getting paid to work out right now, 24/7. That's one way of looking at it. But you just focus on each event and you don't care what's going to happen to you, then really you'll be fine. Like the physical standards are always a buildup from week 1 through week 9. So it's not horrendous what you do the first week. They build you up. Like each of your push-ups go up week to week for your tests. Same with pull-ups, underwaters, lessen the time for your underwaters. So nothing is impossible. You just have to accept the Groundhog's Day of each day is going to be the same, more or less, and just do each individual event one at a time,
What would you say is the similarities and the differences through this build-up process of the instructors of swimmer school and PJ pipeline?
The build-up as in, what would you say?
Well, I'm curious as to what, like, the leadership. Did you notice a lot of similarities as to how the instructors operated through swimmer school versus the PJs?
Yeah, I'd say the instruction was extremely similar. Obviously 2 kind of different jobs, but really similar mindset. I'd say the first 2 months of swimmer school were exactly like pararescue and doc. Just underwaters they're not terrible, but you just have to know when to calm yourself, especially when an instructor is harassing you, or, swimmer school, they're holding on to you, and you just got to relax and just do the task that you're told to do, and you're going to be all right. It's the same with pararescue and doc. Like, you do a thing called buddy breathing. You have to share a snorkel with you and your buddy, all while you're just getting your shirt ripped off and everything like that. People are plugging your snorkel, which doesn't sound that hard, but it can be difficult. They're going to make you. I feel like I did pretty well in pararescue and doc, and I honestly popped on my first underwater the first time ever, on one buddy breathing section with my buddies with the California team right now. They just made it like, if they know you're crushing it, they're going to see how you accept failure, how you handle a failure for the rest of the day. So it doesn't matter if you're the strongest dude. And that's the thing too, like, we'll have guys that will go until they pass out underwater, but you only get 2 shallow water blackouts before they get rid of you. So you have to weigh all these things into that whole, like, I need to last as well as perform. So it was pretty funny. It was a good experience.
So there's a strategy to maybe potentially not pushing yourself to blacking out. It's like, I should take the tap out, or I guess the popping. So popping, for everyone listening, is when you resurface instead of completing the evolution. Is that kind of a potential strategy if you're pushing your limits to the end? Maybe just pop, or I don't know.
I don't recommend popping at all. That's never been a part of my mindset. But it was a task that seemed so impossible at the moment. Like, my buddies never popped on an underwater before either, and they just did it. And whenever I run the tryouts here in Alaska for the 212th Rescue Squadron, we will do it. Even though you never pop, we're going to make sure that you do pop. We'll do some sort of task where either guys they'll black out under the water, we'll pull them out. They have that whole euphoric look in their face, blue in the lips. So we'll make everyone do that. It's just how do you bounce back from that? Are you going to be fearful from then on? Or are you going to go ahead and crush and execute whatever task you got from then on out? And I think that's actually a good thing to an instructor. Like if you're an instructor, it's a good thing to push on, say, your candidate, is to push them to failure. Actually see how they handle failure and bounce back, in my own opinion.
And how does that translate to the mission at hand? The fact that they fail and bounce back.
I think it's great because you as a climber know that sometimes you need a bail, or you take a whiffer on ice climbing or rock climbing on your trad gear. You don't want to fall, but sometimes things happen. Like, are you going to keep on climbing, or you never going to climb again? It's kind of one of those situations.
That's true. A lot of people have like a scare when they perform those recreational activities, and then they either never do it again, or it takes them forever to recover and get back to their mental capacity that they had before that fall or that slightly traumatic event. So yeah, and I'd say probably the training of that, and like my prior training, has potentially helped with that kind of mindset for sure. Now, how did you do when it came to having like the fact that you popped that one time?
I definitely didn't pop again after that, or they maybe just didn't allow it or something like that. But I was so angry at myself that I wouldn't accept that again. So I've always heard throughout my training, like, just, it's a marathon. Don't go 100% every day. My own opinion, I hate to save anything for like an event, whether doing an underwater or doing an overland event. If you're going to do it, you do it. Don't hold back, in my opinion. So I took that pop to heart, and just wanted to crush everything after that. And it's boldest of terms.
I'm sure people listening in are like, what's the specific drill? What made you pop? So you got to share that. Like, what happened? What was it specifically?
It's like they called it Black Thursdays. So every Black Thursday is pretty much the day that's not a Groundhog's Day. You have to put on boots, a uniform, like a buoyancy compensator, like a Triton vest. You put on a mask, snorkel, the whole gamut. And then now you're asked to do underwaters like that, buddy breathe like that. Sometimes when you're buddy breathing, passing the snorkel, they'll maybe cap you more than normal.
So capping is where, you plug the snorkel, it seems.
Yeah. And they're only supposed to cap so many times, but they may have capped more than, the allotted amount, but it's all good. There's nothing wrong with that, honestly. Yeah. So that's pretty much what happened. And it was a different technique. Like I think if you remember from swimmer school, where instructors would not float, they'd be bricks when you're buddy towing them.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of one of those, like, instructors would just lay on top of you. So you have to like try to tread to stay above water and breathe and pass the snorkel. And so they're pretty much keeping you underwater, and you have to like fight for the surface and to make sure your buddy's breathing as well. You're not just stealing all the air. So yeah, it's a good little teamwork exercise. But that's the one that got me.
Are the ethics of that drill typically one breath per person, or you take a couple, pass it?
Yeah, you take a breath, and sometimes it would be half a breath. You might suck up some water. You can't be selfish. You have to make sure your buddy's got a breath, and it has to be teamwork. It has to be reciprocal. So he has to be thinking that about you so you can last I can't remember, 2 minutes, 30 seconds that you have to buddy breathe while getting capped and being brought down to the bottom of the pool. And, it's just one of those things, like when your swimmer school instructors holding on to you, you take them to the bottom of the pool, they're ripping the mask off your face. You're sucking in water. It's kind of that same principle,
It's a pretty cool drill. So is it like one instructor per person doing this snorkel drill?
Yeah. One instructor, and they usually have fins, and they usually just, roll you underwater, cap snorkels. You can't let go of the snorkel at all or you fail. You can't pop. So that popping for a buddy breathing drill is pretty much not breathing off the snorkel and just going to the surface, taking a breath, and then going back underwater. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. So basically not using the snorkel and your mouth resurfacing versus just the snorkel or your top of your head. That's a crazy drill. And do they still do that to this day?
Yeah. I mean, we still do it in Alaska. I'm pretty sure they still do that. And I think it's called assessment and selection is what the Air Force calls it now. But they definitely do it in pre-dive before you go to combat dive. So, yep, they still do that drill. And I had an instructor at Pararescue Indoc. His name was Hats, and he's a funny guy, but he's real. He's just like, I don't know what your problem is. You just hold on to the snorkel, hold on your buddy, and you just breathe off the snorkel. That's all it is. And he's right. If you just do those things, you're going to be fine.
That's breaking it down. Wait, so what do you mean by holding, not to get too in the nitty-gritty of this drill, but it's really captivating. What do you mean by holding on to your buddy? You do hold on to the other guy the whole time as well?
Yeah. So you're holding on to the snorkel, then you're holding on to your buddy, and you're just passing the snorkel back and forth. Yeah. So if you never let go of the snorkel. So if you get ripped away from your buddy, you both have to hold on to the snorkel, whether you're getting like gator rolled, put to the bottom, whatever it may be. You don't let go of the snorkel.
But both of you sometimes are holding the snorkel, like even if you're getting gator rolled. Interesting.
Yep.
That's a fun drill. That's a really cool drill.
It's good. Yep.
Yeah. And I've heard recently, I think swimmer schools, they finally adopted we had somebody talk on one of our previous episodes about jiu-jitsu and how they've adopted that into the whole swimmer program. And I think now they have basically underwater jiu-jitsu, like little matches or whatnot, where like two swimmers come together and they have to perform the specific movements that they've been taught to get in or out of different situations. It seems it seems like a good evolution from what I hear, So I want to get into a little bit your psychology going and surviving and succeeding through these two programs. And I guess one of my questions was, what was your why in succeeding in both of those schools? What keeps you driven through the very grueling process?
I think the will to challenge yourself is, in its most basic terms, is I really wanted to challenge myself. I didn't even join the Coast Guard to do the swimmer program. I didn't even know about it, honestly. I just joined the Coast Guard to join the military and travel. And then my time as a non-rate in the Coast Guard, I was like, man, nothing seems challenging until I went to Port Angeles, the air station there. And just all it took was a couple of swimmer, the chief there and the first class there were just like, you'd make a good swimmer. And I was just like, what's that? And then they showed me what it was. I was like, that's pretty awesome. And I really just wanted to challenge myself and learn how to swim and do all those things. And that's what it was like for me in the Coast Guard, is I really wanted to challenge myself. And then as I got into the job, I was like, man, this job is awesome. It puts you in some extreme positions on some SAR cases. And then I started to learn more and more about the military and different jobs. And then pararescue came into mind, and same thing in the pararescue pipeline is, I just wanted to challenge myself, learn more, and I really wanted to do the job. It's very similar. You still do civil SAR, and then you also do combat search and rescue, augment other teams, whether they're, Rangers, SEALs, what have you. That just always appealed to me, and it's just always kept me like self-motivated to do that. And I think a lot of it comes down is the dude next to you. That's really what it comes down to. Like the longer I do this job, I think that's what I would miss the most, is like just the guys the like-minded guys you work with. If I went out in the civilian world, it's hard to find that type of environment. Bunch of pipe hitters, knuckle draggers that you just enjoy being with and that share the same passion as you do, doing a really cool job.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of things here, and my question is, what is your why when you're really in the suck, right? Like what keeps you kicking when you're, you know, kind of on the verge of quitting? And you touched on, it's about the guy next to you. And that's something I've talked about in one of we have a program called the Hold Your Breath Like a Rescue Swimmer program. And yeah, I dive into the underwaters and kind of the mental process in one of the chapters. And one of the things I explain is, yeah, think of the guy that's next to you and think it's not just about you. It's about the fact that that person next to you hasn't quit through this process yet. So don't you dare quit on them. And it seems like that was potentially one of your processes of not quitting, is thinking of the person next to you and the fact that you guys are a team. And if one quit, then it incites the other to quit. So you're not going to do that because they're not going to do that. Would that be fair to say that was kind of one of your motivating driving forces in the suck?
Yeah, absolutely. Quitting's infectious, as you know, but what also is infectious in a good way is showing that you can beat whatever it is that you're faced with. And I think it all boils down to like a hard civil SAR mission, or even in combat. You're going to be faced with adversity, and if you can remain cool, calm, and collected in hard situations and show people that you could do these situations and succeed. It's all about the person you're going out to get, you know. If you can get them out of the situation, I mean, that's really all that matters. So if you can think about that while you're doing these hard tasks, whether it be a underwater or just the longest ruck with the heaviest load ever, just grueling through that process and doing it well. I mean, that's the mindset to have. Like, just think that you're doing that to get someone out of a tight situation, because those are very real. Sooner or later in this job, whether it's swimmer or pararescue, you will be in a cold, dark, and stormy sooner or later. And it's just going to be you. And in pararescue, it's probably going to be you and a buddy or two, your team. You have to learn to adapt and succeed for the patient that you're going to get.
So you would say that would be an additional mindset tool that you would use, is thinking of the survivor and the person in distress that you're working so hard to hopefully someday assist.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you do the job for rescue swimmer or pararescue. It's you're not shooting people in the face. I mean, sometimes some guys get that opportunity, but you just have to know going into that job that that's your primary job, and just take it serious. And I think that's what separates swimmer and pararescue from or other special operations jobs from, you know, the civilian world, is we can do those things that other people can't, or else anybody could do our job, you know.
Yep.
You know, parachuting, all these things that we do, they're really not hard, but the fact that we do our job is because we can push the limits, training, what have you, have put us in.
Yeah, I always like breaking down that mindset. Well, first of all, it's called the rescue swimmer mindset, so I guess that's part of what we should be doing.
It's all good. It's all the same, really.
Yeah,
same principle.
But yeah, I like the similarities, and I think most people that succeed in any kind of athletic disciplinary endeavor they do share those similarities of their mindset. And yeah, you thinking of the survivor down the road, I had a similar trick. It was like the same, but it's kind of embarrassing because I think I was young enough where high school wasn't that far away. I think it was like 3 years, after finishing high school that I was in the swimming program. And I remember I had like a high school crush who, I was too shy at the time to say anything to or whatever. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But going through the swimmer program, I was like, man, if that person was drowning right now, like when it was really hard underwater, I'd be like, man, I can't quit on that person. So you play those little mind games of like, hey, there's like somebody that you care about or just the life you value. And like that kept me kicking. It's like, I can't quit on that person. I can't let that person drown,
Yeah. I had a really come to God moment on one mission in Astoria. One of the flight mechs was in the Cascades, Mount Rainier to be specific, and went hiking and got too close to a chute, a steep snow chute, and ended up wearing tennis shoes. He ended up falling a few hundred feet and ended up in a steep cliffed out section. It was just weekend duty and ended up calling in another swimmer, and we went out there with ropes, crampons, what have you. I mean, it was like a 12-hour SAR case, and we knew it was one of our buddies that got put over the radio chatter. That went well from the evening straight into 5 a.m. the next morning of rappelling, trying to search these steep ravines, looking for him. We found him, and he was in a bad way, and he was in and out of consciousness at the time, joking around. But just knowing that you've worked with him as your friend, not just for work but outside of work, that's extremely motivating. Like, I cannot mess this up right now, or else, none of us are going to get out of here, because it was treacherous terrain. And we ended up doing a hasty lower. The other swimmer ended up climbing down to get the Stokes litter, because we're in kind of like overhanging rock at the time. So we're getting rocks coming down when they try to lower the litter to us. So he had to climb down, long story short, get the litter back up. Now we had to figure out how to get him down to this, where the drainage kind of opened. It was kind of a snow field, like a little steep ravine into a snow field. So we had to figure out how to get him there. And really what it came down to is doing a body belay of him, the rope clipped to the head of the litter, and then the other swimmer was acting as what you call like a barrelman. So he was clipped to the litter as well, but like maneuvering the litter around rocks, scree fields, various types of terrain down to that snow field. And it was, it was humbling, but it was like, this is why you train hard. And this is why you have to stay mentally fit as well, not just physically fit, just to stay in the fight. And I mean, I think that was my first mission in Astoria, where I was just like, I mean, this is why we do it, so.
That's insane. So
yeah.
So for anybody listening in, and like a body belay, as in the friction of the rope around your body, and you're lowering this person in a litter off of more or less a cliff, or at least a very steep area.
Yeah, it was like third and fourth class terrain is pretty much what it was. So it was like that in between steep to chossy rock, which sometimes is more difficult because it's not as straightforward as lowering someone off of a cliff,
Yeah.
But either way, it was difficult. I thought it was difficult at night,
Jesus. I mean, I'll say, like, and were you the person holding this person on this body belay, or?
Yep. I just opted to do that. I was in a good position. My feet were really good, really secure in my position. And then the other swimmer felt comfortable maneuvering everything around. He had crampons on. So ended up working out. And then of course the helicopter was in a tight spot. They were like nose into the cliff, into this ravine, and ended up doing like just a 200-foot hoist out. So it was awesome by everyone involved.
Yeah, that's a very impressive story. And the litter itself is heavy, and I'm assuming his flight mechanic wasn't light on top of that. And you holding that, just the pressure of that, right? Because it's no longer a mechanical equipment. It's kind of, well, I mean, there's mechanical advantage, but you're holding this person's life literally on a line, similar to a flight mechanic, except they don't have the helicopter to help. So it seems like a big, high pressure situation. Wow. Yeah, hats off to you for that case. I never heard of one like that. And especially the fact that, like, what were you trained in rope systems? Because I know most swimmers aren't trained in any kind of rock climbing rope systems,
Well, the other swimmer had just done a rock course in I think Colorado is where he went TDY just like a month prior to that. And then I was just getting into like doing a bunch of mountaineering. I didn't know how to like rock climb too much or ice climb back then. Doing mountaineering, and I had just done an ascent of like Mount Rainier not too long before that. So I had the basic mountaineering knowledge of using rock belays and stuff like that, body belays. So it's just weird how some of that stuff works out.
Cool. Let's get back into your selection process a little bit.
Cool.
But I have one last question. What was the most challenging part of that selection process for you? How about let's go, and what was the hardest swimmers school part for you, and what was the hardest PJ part for you?
Sure. Start with swimmer school. Honestly, got set back. I didn't pass the aviator test. It was like week 7 or something like that. I kept going over time every time. I think you get like 10 minutes or something to do it.
That's the parachute test for people listening in.
Yeah, the parachute test. And yeah, I honestly, I didn't pass it. Went over time, the 3 tests I did, and instructors were awesome, and I was fortunate to be set back. So that was the hardest part. That was like my first failure. I did well physically, mentally, everything else. Underwaters, no problem. So that was what set me back out of all things. I was like, what the heck? So I got set back to the beginning, which is, it sucks, but it's also like a blessing in disguise. The guys I was with, it was a great team after that, and I feel like I helped them a lot, and it was awesome. So just went through the entire, process all over again, and ended up doing fine.
What is that like as far as going through kind of twice for certain sections of something as challenging as swimmer school?
Challenging was physically, because you're still doing like Groundhog's Day, getting, just run through the grinder every single day. Now it's, instead of just the first 2 months, now it just got extended into 4 months for the first 2 months, doing the hardest part of swimmer school, I'd say. So that did wear on my body. I was getting like IT band syndrome and a bunch of other little things that were popping up, but you take enough Tylenol and Advil, your mind's still there. So that part, your body's gonna, I'd say my body didn't handle it very well, because I was just a stockier dude, never swam too much before. So as long as your mind's in it, your body will follow. Just got to take care of it, with foam rolling, what have you.
What about the PJ pipeline?
Honestly, the hardest part, and I think most PJs will agree, was the paramedic program is ran by University of New Mexico. It wasn't like a military ran program. So it was a bunch of guys like us, type A guerrillas that are stuck in a classroom, because it's a condensed paramedic course. Usually it's 2 years if you're civilian, but it's condensed in like 7 or 8 months for us, and instructors that don't understand us that much. So guys were always getting in trouble or not used to studying, all throughout the day and then all throughout the night. And I think that was the hardest part, honestly. It's kind of weird, but staying in it mentally for the academics portion was very difficult for a lot of us.
Well, personally, I thought EMT school was very challenging enough, right? And now you're bumping it up a level to paramedic. Yeah, in comparison, was it so much harder than EMT school as a swimmer?
It was the same deal, where it's just like hard and fast, where you just you have to do it, or else you're not going to do it. You're not going to do the job. So It was one of those, like, guys want to learn it, but it's still a roadblock in the pipeline. Like, you have to get through that, or else you're either going to get kicked out of the pipeline, or you're going to continue. It's one of the two options. And guys just had a hard time with that, because you don't have much time to work out. It's not the same type of training, that you do, go to free fall school, static line, dive school. All those are like things that you really want to learn, and physically and mentally it really challenges the guys. But this one was just like EMT school. It was kind of like mind numbing. It was good stuff. It's awesome stuff to learn, but it's ran by civilian instructors, not your own type of people. And guys got in trouble a lot. Guys mentally had a hard time with the registry, and just how fast it was. It was difficult for a lot of guys to overcome.
So what kind of trouble were people getting into? Like, was that just out of because you're in civilian world and you go out to the bar kind of situation, or?
Yeah, some of that. We like to joke around and mess around, and like some of the instructors didn't like that. So say we do a joke, which is not as politically correct as most people are used to. Like, civilian instructors don't like that sometimes, and would complain to the PJ cadre back at the PJ schoolhouse. So that would get guys in a lot of trouble. And then, of course, the National Registry was very difficult. A lot of guys didn't pass that. So I'd say there's a majority of what happened. Yeah. And bar stuff too.
Yeah. Now, I feel like you at least had the advantage of having done the whole EMT national registry first. Would you say that helped out a lot for paramedic?
Yeah, absolutely. I had the option of skipping that portion. They had like a 5-week kind of same deal going through EMT basic, but I just opted to stay because I would be with the guys I went through my initial selection with, and I don't know, that was important for me to stick with those dudes, you know.
Yeah. Not to mention personally how cram-packed EMT school is. I remember finishing and like passing the national registry and being like, whoa, I don't feel like, I know I passed, but I need to keep my nose in the books for a while and keep learning, because that was packed. Like I don't feel like I'm ready to go out and provide medical care just yet. And yeah, I did take some time after that to keep studying, you know. So I think going through AMT school twice, it's like watching one of those like really, you know, action packed or like dialogue packed and like plot packed movies. You're like, you watch it the second time, you're like, holy shit, I didn't even understand this movie the first time, you know. Like, so I would take that advantage too.
Yeah. I went through EMT school twice as well, man. So I feel you.
Yeah, I'm sure you learned a lot like the second time too, you know.
Yeah.
I had the luxury of I did a NOLS course, and we go through WFR, so Wilderness First Responder course. And that like just blew my mind as well, because I'd done a little ski patrolling, and that was great too. Like basically anytime I'm doing any kind of like new medical system, right? Sometimes I'll go in with the mindset like a little, unfortunately, cocky. I'm like, I probably know a lot of this as an EMT. I'm still registered. But then I go through ski patrol and I go through this Wilderness First Responder. I'm like, man, it's amazing. Like I didn't know that. Like, and like, or just like how to do certain things better and more efficiently. And you always pick something up, you know? So that's really cool. Yeah. As far as like the training taking a toll on your body, I think one of our folks, we have a Facebook group called the RSM Training Circle. So folks that are going PJ and basically anything Navy SEAL and swimmer ask questions. And I think Jacob was like, how are you such a stud and how did your body not break down? So yeah, like what were you doing? Because you've gone through such long training. Now I've just found out that you kind of went through swimmer school partially twice. Yeah, how did you survive that? How do you survive at 25 years old going through the pipeline? And like what kind of mitigating and mobility and stability drills would you do to prevent those injuries?
Really came down to lacrosse balls, foam rollers, Advil, and guys using the tiger tail to roll you out, you know, roll out your calves, which is painful. Just little things like that. And you have to keep stretching, you know, especially if you get older, you get more aches and pains that you can't just muscle through, you know. Let's say if you're in your early 20s or something like that, you can just make it through. But once you get older, definitely the aches and pains linger. So if you're doing your, you know, kind of like swimmer school, I still do the same workouts, the whole core performance, push, pull, legs, core, movement prep. If you stick with that stuff and just don't, you know, jump in a workout and then don't worry about stretching, it's probably going to take its toll eventually. So yeah, if you do all those little things that you're supposed to do, that will definitely increase your, not just career longevity, but even more short term, where you're just Groundhog's Day doing the same beat down of your body every day.
Would you have kind of a routine go-to prior to and post training that you would do, you know, on your own, as far as like, you know, a movement or stability drill or something?
Yeah, I'd say, before I definitely foam roll before, then I do my movement prep, my plyometrics, med ball work, and then I do some sort of power. So maybe like deadlifts, cleans, what have you. And then I do a couple circuits of 4 rounds each, push, pull, legs, core. And then after, like, you got to make sure that you're, you know, drinking water. And then I, again, foam roll again. And for like training programs, definitely having something that you can, I guess, let off some steam. I mean, everything comes down, like, you have to have your own routine, you know? And it's funny that you mentioned like the movie The Edge. That was our thing in swimmer school, is like we watch I think the Edge or Nacho Libre every night. You know,
No
it's
way.
pretty ridiculous, but that was just the thing. We just watched like those two movies. I don't know, that was just our thing. So as long as you get in whatever routine, I think that's the key to like not just mentally but physically getting through it.
Yeah. I think that it's a great motivating movie as far as like again, like the non-quitting, like survival mindset. Anthony Hopkins talking up, what's his name again?
Alec Baldwin.
Yeah. And Alec Baldwin is kind of in the panicky state of freaking out. And then because this bear is like basically harassing and tormenting them. And I love Anthony Hopkins just talking about like, well, I always love this speech, especially like as an outdoorsman of, you know, what is the main cause of death in the wild, right? And it's shame. And individuals die of shame instead of looking at like what is the next step to surviving and finding a solution. They're embarrassed because I mean everyone feels that way. You're like, how could I put myself in this stupid situation on like a recreational sport? So they die of shame, and I always love that. But then like when the bear's harassing them, and it's like, you know, like psyching them out, like I'm gonna kill the bear. Say it louder. I'm gonna kill the bear.
That's
what are you
my
gonna
favorite
do?
scene right there.
You're gonna kill the bear, and then like at the end, like, good, because tomorrow we're gonna kill the motherfucker. I love that.
Oh yeah. That's the best part, man.
So looking back on your journey, are you glad you did it in this cycle of starting with the Coast Guard and ending up in the Air Force, or would you reverse it? How do you like how you did it?
I like it the way I did it. Honestly, I wouldn't change it, like going pararescue first at all. Maybe just doing that my whole career. I think honestly going swimmer was kind of a natural like progression because honestly it's only helped me out as a PJ, like the airmanship that you do, like the EMT work, all the ocean rescues, all the medevacs that you do. That's something that pararescue is good at, but being a swimmer, like I know whenever I brief or talk to aircrew about how we're going to do civil SAR missions here in Alaska, is just transferred so easily. Even in overseas when we're deployed, just the airmanship is, you know, I'd say most PJs coming out of the pipeline, they are not as confident talking to aircrew or doing things with aircrew because they're two separate squadrons. And in the Coast Guard, everyone's in the same unit together, training all the time, doing EP sorties, training sorties, everything. And that has made my transition, I wouldn't say flawless, but definitely ease the transition of doing like civil search and rescue, training sorties with Air Force air crews, or even jumps. Like I wasn't used to dealing with C-130s too much and how you know operations go with them. That was the one thing I didn't know too much about. And honestly, it's talking to the air crews with the C-130 is very similar, or a C-17 whenever we're doing like a free fall or static line jump. It all blends in. So I'm really happy with going from the Coast Guard to like Air Force Pararescue.
Do you guys mostly free fall out of C-130s?
Mostly, I'd say. Every once in a while, we do C-17 jumps as well.
What's that feeling like? You know, the whole free falling. I've never done it personally. I've done it strapped to a dude, but like that's not the same.
Yeah. Honestly, I was pretty scared at free fall school. You do things from the helicopter, but it's different once the ramp opens down and you're 12,000 feet up. And now it's funny how the military does things. Like instead of like civilian skydiving, you're just jumping out with a small parachute, shorts and a t-shirt and some goggles. And you're like, this is awesome. And it's still awesome in the military, but now you have like a 60-pound ruck strapped to you. You have a 40-pound parachute, and it's still really fun, but it's definitely nerve-wracking if you're not used to it, especially starting out. So if I don't jump for a while and that ramp opens, I still get the butterflies in my stomach every time that ramp opens up.
How often are those qualifications for jumping out? You know, I'm assuming you have standards. You got to do it a certain amount of times and frequently, right? How often do you do it?
I'd say before this year with COVID 2020, we'd jump probably a handful of times a month at the very least.
Yeah.
And I think every 6 months you need a few jumps at the minimum.
That's cool. It's a whole different world.
Yeah.
I talked about on the podcast, the reason I became a swimmer is I first was looking into becoming a Canadian SARTech. So search and rescue technicians, and they're cool because they do very similar to PJ. Actually, I'd say it's more comparable to PJ than a swimmer in the Coast Guard because they do the swimmer in the Coast Guard type stuff, but they also jump out of helos. They're so kind of far fetched that they'll pack in a helicopter into a plane, fly it out to the boonies of I think Antarctica area. Wait, Antarctica? No, that's the South. So the Arctic, right? Yeah. And they'll unpack the helo and then launch from there to do whatever search and rescue they have to do.
Oh, yeah.
And they do like scuba diving and stuff like that. And yeah, it's really cool because you guys do so much more. You got to be proficient in so many more realms. Is that mostly what you've done though, as far as your PJ career is serving in the civilian search and rescue, or have you done any combat missions?
Yep. We deploy 4 months every 12 months or so. Just finished my third deployment with the unit. Yeah, the last one we did, it was a couple handfuls of CASEVAC missions. So it's short for casualty evacuation. So you land at a hot or cold LZ with the patient who's been blown up in an IED or a gunshot wound, whatever the situation is, and then you go in, you run, you pick them up from wherever the special operations ground medic is. Yeah, you take them into the helicopter, treat them, give them blood products, all the meds that accompany whatever their injuries are, and then you get them to a higher level of care. And it's a little quicker than civil missions because it's everything's turn and burn. You have to honor that golden hour from the time of injury. You have to launch, get them back to damage control surgery, ideally within that first hour. So that's pretty much all that was, this last deployment.
And where was this deployment?
It was in Somalia.
Oh, wow. So we still have like a lot of operations in Somalia. I wasn't aware of this.
Oh,
wow.
Oh yeah. Yeah, a ton.
What's
still there?
What's the current mission out there as far as like the armed forces? What are we trying to accomplish there right now?
Pretty much everything's a proxy war. So we're just helping the local populace being able to fight their own wars eventually. So pretty much seems like it's the standard Green Beret mission, how we're kind of with the local military trying to teach them to fight their own war.
What is their own war? Who are they trying to work against? Or
pretty much al-Shabaab is the bad guys in that part of Africa, just same as how ISIS or Al-Qaeda is for Iraq or Afghanistan. Pretty much that's pretty much what it is. It's no new news. Like, we're trying to help the Afghan military being able to fight their own wars, and we're helping them do that. So eventually we could just be hands off, say goodbye, and then you guys have to wait. You guys are taking care of your own business.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just really curious because Somalia, I don't know anything about. And you said al-Shabaab. Is that?
Yeah. Well, al-Shabaab is like the name of the group, kind of like ISIS is the name of that group.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, just different faction, I guess. Yeah.
And what's kind of their mission statement as far as like why are they so hostile, or what's their deal? Is it associated with the pirates as well? Still, that's all I know about Somalia, really.
Oh yeah, they do piracy as well, but it's just like the same as Taliban or Al-Qaeda. They have or have done grievances against the United States or partner nations. So that's why, in turn, we're there to disrupt them, whatever we can to degrade their operations and get rid of them completely.
Is it a religion-based organization as well?
To some degree, I'm sure, but in Somalia, everyone, for the most part, has a certain religious belief, but it's more of like a mob base. Like, this mob controls this part of it, and they're fighting against another mob for more power, and it's just like little factions like that. But this is like a bigger faction, just trying to take over like an entire country, pretty much. Yeah, I guess that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, and what's been your experience interacting with the Somalian populace as far as, their culture, their personalities?
Oh, I mean, awesome. The ones that are on base are, I mean, they love Americans and everything like that. And then the partner forces we work with they're awesome, man. We work with the Kenyans a lot too, and those guys are freaking war fighters. It's pretty cool. And they're honestly, Somalia's, at least coastal Somalia, is beautiful. If you like surfing or anything like that, is some of the probably coolest surf spots I've ever seen, flying up and down the coast.
Is it not over polluted in the ocean, or?
I mean, probably by the cities like Mogadishu or something. There's like lots of trash or whatever on the beach or something. But up and down the coast, north or south, the big cities are just barren, beautiful beaches. It would be a prime spot if you're a guy that just want to, if you like to go surf in Nicaragua or something, that'd be a spot to go.
Yeah, that's cool. Again, what would you say is a personality difference between Americans and the Somalians, and, their thought process and just being over there?
Oh man, that's a hard one to answer. I mean, they've been doing their deal for years and years and years. I mean, it is what it is. Hopefully we could do something eventually to make it to where it's like a prosperous country again. I mean, it is a beautiful country. They've just been at war for decades. So I don't know how to answer that one. I don't know the end state goal for that.
No, I was just more curious, like I've traveled a little bit and had every place, every country has kind of their own culture, and just going like Southeast Asia and like say like Cambodia, and like Vietnam, like I'd say in general, in comparison, if you were to compare it to American kind of standards, if you will, like of course there's a little more poverty, but there it is still that more or less the communism system, right? So it's interesting to see how they are all community driven. And I remember just like buying like a shirt in like one of these, like these marketplaces, and I mean, just those interactions are always fun, right? Like going to the marketplaces and stuff. Trying to buy a shirt, and I was like, oh, do you have this in like a large or something? I was getting proficient with the language, and she goes like, oh yeah, hold on. No, I don't. And she just like yells over to someone else in a different shop, like a different shop down the road. She's like, you got a large? And she's like, yeah. And she just brings it over. And then,
it's a small.
No, it was a large, it fit, right? But it was kind of interesting. Like, and then I think on top of that, she needed change for whatever bill I was giving. So she goes back to that same person. She's like, you got change? Like, so it was kind of interesting. Like, there were different shop, different entities, but it was all that sense of community. Like, it didn't matter that much. Like, like a sale's a sale or whatever. Like, it was again, that sense of culture and community.
Yeah, I'd say it's the same. It's really different. It's there's a lot of nomads there. So you'll see flying all over the country in the middle of nowhere. There's just a lot of tents everywhere, throughout the places you wouldn't even think people would live. There's like tons of tents. And then like Mogadishu really is a beautiful, beautiful city. As far as the populace, it's a military deployment, so you don't get to interact with the populace that much. You interact with like, their military quite a bit to help them fight their own wars. But I would, if war wasn't a thing over there, it'd be a cool place to visit and try to experience those things.
When you say they're just like tenting out, what, like in desert lands or something kind of thing, you notice?
Yeah, I'd say the middle of Somalia is kind of like Midland, Texas. If you ever been in the middle of Texas,
okay,
it's kind of like that. And then every once in a while, you get these huge, kind of looks like red rocks. You get these huge red sandstones that just shoot up, these huge monoliths all over the country, and it's really cool. It'd be great rock climbing too.
Oh yeah. I was just thinking that. Too. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And what do you think they're surviving on?
I mean, there's tons of food. They got chickens. Somalia has the biggest camel population on earth. So, they herd camels a lot. They eat them. There's tons of warthogs. There's baboons everywhere.
Baboons.
Leopards. Yeah, leopards. All sorts of stuff.
Have you eaten camel? For some reason, I've craved that for my entire existence. Like whenever I'm hungry somewhere, I'm like, man, I could really go for some camel. And I don't know why I've always said that, but it just sounds like it's like rough, tough, a little jerky, and like hard to chew. But it sounds delicious to me. I don't know why. Like, have you had it?
It's a little tough. Our interpreter, she's super nice. Like when we were leaving, she cooked up a bunch of goats and a bunch of camel for us, and it was really good. It is a little bit tougher than most meats, but the spice that they put on it makes up for any toughness. So it was pretty good.
Dude, a nice little like marinated, and then you like jerk, like make it kind of a jerk camel. It sounds good to me. I don't know why. I don't know why I say that. I have no experience, but yeah, it sounds delicious. Just because you've experienced the Coast Guard and the Air Force, one thing I started thinking about is like anything you hated about how like the Coast Guard ran things. Once you've found a different way in the Air Force, you're like, oh, that was kind of stupid that we did it that way, or vice versa.
Oh yeah. I'd say a thing about the Air Force that I don't like that the Coast Guard does well is actually like vertical surface. We practice that a lot more, cliffs or dummies on cliffs and stuff like that. I feel the Coast Guard definitely practices it a lot more, even though in Alaska we do cliff pickoffs in the Alaska Range or the Chugach Mountains all the time. I'd say the Coast Guard is better in like the process of doing like a backwards L or J up the cliff, stropping a survivor and everything like that. It's very fluid in that motion. I think Coast Guard does do it better that way. I'd say hoisting to vessels, definitely much better in the Coast Guard. Obviously, it's bread and butter. It's usually it's a little more difficult to explain to like Air Force air crews how to, approach different vessels and whatnot, and just the way they line up versus how the Coast Guard lines up at a 45 to vessels and crabs in. We obviously do water work a lot better. For the Air Force, what I like about it a lot more than what we did in the Coast Guard was how we utilize the trail line, or we call it a tag line in the Air Force, and the same with like climbing community, use a tag line for stuff. Coast Guard uses it always on the eye of the hoist hook, if you remember.
Yeah. For
any time you're tagging a basket, a litter, or whatever, it's always on the eye of the hoist hook, which doesn't offer any stability, So in the Air Force, we attach it with a weak link on the foot of the litter or the foot of the basket. So that way you can actually maneuver that device whichever way you want. So you could swing the foot one way, swing the foot another way. You could help that. You can help the litter get into the helicopter by swinging the foot of the litter away from the helicopter so the flight mech can pull it in easier. And we also do, we call it barrelman. So pretty much a PJ is attached to the litter as well. Just that way it's easier to get that patient into the helicopter as well. And then you're not delaying treatment at all. So once those two are in the helicopter, boom, you could re-administer CPR, you could start life-saving treatments while the other PJ on the ground is dealing with the tag line, cleaning it up, whatever. So
is there anything you learned as a PJ as well that you wish you knew as a swimmer that potentially could have made that job a little easier or better?
Yeah, we do have a lot of like our final course in the PJ pipeline. You go through the PJ apprentice course, and you go through a lot of mountain, like pretty much rock and ice rope courses. So you learn how to do haul systems, how to access patients in different environments, whether it's confined space. We learn how to, if there's an earthquake with rubble, you learn how to use lift bags and different things to get patients out of out from underneath a rubble, out of confined spaces.
What's an example of a confined space for a rescue?
I'd say maybe workers were in a tunnel system, like in a sewer system, and something happens, an explosion, or there's poisonous gases in there. You could use confined space rope techniques and access that space with like a foldable litter called a SCEDCO, and then access that patient. And you have different, pretty much going down with the SCBA, kind of like firefighters do, just like a specialized SCBA system, and then access the patient. You got atmospheric monitors to notify you if there's some sort of gas that is unfavorable. So if you need to change your filter system, I could go down the weeds, but just situations like that,
What about swimmer schools that have been valuable as a PJ?
I'd say ocean rescues definitely have made things easier in like Alaska water rescues. I just know what works and what doesn't. PJs don't usually use the rescue basket that much, and that is a extremely valuable tool. And so is the sling deployment, where you just slip out of the rescue strop. That is a tool that the Air Force doesn't use that much or knows much about. And that's extremely valuable to get the helicopter away from like big waves or debris or anything like that, and get the rescuer into the situation a little bit quicker, I'd say. So yeah, strops, baskets. That, like I said, the airmanship with swimmers is much better than airmanship as that pararescue learns throughout the pipeline.
Well, like we said in the beginning of the show, we heard great things about like the fact that you had your water confidence abilities and how successful you were in the PJ pipeline. So that was cool to hear, like, the success of a swimmer as far as that realm of the PJ pipeline go. And yeah, a lot of our questions again were like, how did you survive and like your body breaking down? So that's cool that you talked about, deadlifting and stuff. I was just listening to a Joe Rogan podcast, and they were talking about deadlifting, and especially as you get older, the benefits of deadlifting and basically putting your body under heavy pressures, heavy weights, and the fact that it rebuilds the bones, and it kind of teaches your body structure, hey, this guy likes to lift heavy things, so let's create a system that's going to support that. And I think that does truly help with long-term like injury prevention. Oh, yeah. So that's cool to hear that you were doing that too. I just started trying to do that a little bit more myself. Like I've had some like back injuries and stuff, and trying to get back into the whole deadlifting thing has been a process.
It's hard.
Yeah. But I think overall, if you're careful, you do your stretches, and like in the long run, if you're smart about it, that's definitely something that's valuable as you get older, those Olympic lifts. So.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So what's your let's end with what you're up to recently. I see you're an ice climber, which is really cool. How long have you been doing those shenanigans for?
Honestly, I learned most of this stuff, rock climbing, ice climbing, when I switched over to pararescue, because I just didn't have the gear, the tools, or the knowledge. You have to pay for courses if you're in the Coast Guard or on your own dime to go learn that stuff. And I guess joining pararescue is like a gateway to get all that gear for free and learn it. And
you get ice tools for free as a PJ.
Oh yeah,
there you go. So ice tools are ice picks for everyone listening. That's great.
Yeah. So we get issued all that, and I'm in the Alaska team, so there's tons of dudes who do it on their own. If you want to be truly good at something, the guys will go do it on their own, personal time to get good at it. I think that's how everything is. One of the PJs, his name's Shane. He's an animal. You would love him. He's just one of those dudes who'll run a marathon and then go do like Denali the next week or something like that. He's just an animal. But anyways, he taught me how to climb, and I just a few years ago got into it from there. Started doing harder climbs as I got more experience.
Are we talking rock or ice right now?
Both. Okay. Both. I'd say I'm a 5'9" trad rock climber right now, so nothing tremendous, but I do prefer ice more, just because I find it aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty. But a cool story is a buddy of mine. He was a PJ, and now he's going through like Air Force pilot training. he bought his own like bush plane, and he just put skis on it, and we went into the Wrangles, just into a remote location called the Chittestone River, and it's just these huge canyons that come up on either side, and climbs that you'll see climbs everywhere that go for thousands of feet. And it was really cool. And it was like my second year of ice climbing. I'm like, oh man, like all of these are definitely steep. They're steep and committing climbs. I'm like, oh gosh. And we approached with like AT ski boots. So we didn't have like actual climbing boots. So that was going to make it more difficult one, you know. So we land and we stay at this public use cabin that was kind of next to this remote airstrip. And then the next morning, it was all on like a weekend. So we try to just do this in a weekend. So we do a couple mile skin into this one climb. And there's not much info about it except for memoirs that are written by some Alaska legend, Carl Tobin. So we get to this climb. I just look at it. I'm like, this is probably gonna be pretty difficult. It was scary. It was like the start of a 1,000-foot climb, but the first tier was about 200 feet, a full rope length. Cool. And I'm in a 2-buckle AT boot setup. I'm like, oh gosh. So I was like, well, you know, you don't have to do something, but sometimes you're there and you have to do it, you know. So and the ice was dripping wet, and it was like 0 degrees out too. So you can imagine everything was frozen. The ropes were frozen. Yeah, ended up getting up that first tier, and we ended up getting up to the second tier. And by that time, the daylight was fading. So, and we had to fly back the next day. So we ended up, you know, repelling the route and getting back to his plane so he could set up to leave the next day. But that was just, Alaska's full of stuff like that where you can just pick your adventure, and it's been pretty fun.
Did you rappel on like a V thread or?
Yeah, well, we actually had a nice, decent sized tree that we just left some cord on and just wrapped off of that.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we should have you on. I run this other podcast personally, the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐻 podcast, and yeah, we had some New Zealand mountaineers, and they talked about falling. It was like at least 60 feet down an ice crevice in New Zealand, and but yeah, we were talking about V threads as well. V threads, for all those listening in ice climbing terms, it's when you drill a V in the ice, and you basically like feed a little rope through, and then you'll rappel off of that, and you keep leaving the rope in the ice, and you hope the ice will hold. I've never done it to like bail or anything, but it sounds scary to me.
It's actually as strong as it gets. I've bailed off a couple of climbs, and as long as the ice is good, if you drill it and it's not fracturing, pretty much you just make a V through the ice and thread a rope or some cord if you want to leave cord, and it could hold I think like 8 kilonewtons, which is a lot of weight. I mean, 1 kilonewton's 200-pound dude, more or less, so it could hold a lot of weight. I wouldn't be like, yeah.
That's so scary. Yeah.
It is scary for sure.
If you feed the rope through directly, are you able to pull that without it freezing into the hole? Like that's okay. Like it works out.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you use like skinnier ropes for ice climbing, or alpine routes, is just so you could feed it through that V thread, and then it won't freeze. I've had bigger ropes, like 9.5 millimeter ropes, get stuck in there on super wet ice. So that's a pain in the butt. So you always run that chance, which is sometimes if you have cord to leave cord. I know that's not the best practice, but you know, it's your life, so you got to do what you got to do, you know. But yeah.
Well, I'll talk to you after the podcast, and maybe we can have you on the WildErtainment telling some entertaining. Cool. We call it wilderness entertainment as the show goes. So that's sweet. That's cool. But yeah, I just like the fact that you're doing ice climbing and that you've been through all this life journey, because ice climbing, it just ties into it's a very similar sport to the military athleticism that you've been through. Ice climbing I always describe it as, it's basically roofing in the winter in Russia. It's more gritty than it is like it as you go up in skill, it becomes a refined sport, but at first it's just basically your grittiness, how much you can fight through the suck, right? So like how much you can tolerate this terrible environment, the cold, and just hacking and just kind of surviving, because you know your arms get tired. The whole point is like there's nothing super difficult to pull on per se, because you know you're always holding on to this ice axe, which is a great handle, but you're getting very tired over a short period of time, you know, just holding those things.
I was in Valdez a week ago with my wife, and you know, it was like 9 degrees, but blowing like 50 miles an hour through Keystone Canyon there. And I just set up this top rope, just have fun with my wife and get some reps in. And I just see there's this huge climb called Bridal Veil, which is like a 600-foot water ice 5 grade ice climb. And I just saw these two dudes, probably tough as nails, just climbing it. And those temps and those winds, and on a top rope, I was like, man, this is debilitating, you know? And they're going for it the entire way. It didn't bail off at all. I was like, man, they must be training for some big route in the Alaska range. That's awesome. But power to them.
They always say, like, especially when you're ice climbing, multi-pitching, so you know, extending the length of a rope and continuing on, for example, the 600-foot cliff. It's basically two thought process, right? The guy that's climbing, so the guy actively leading and potentially going to fall, he's scared. The other guy, belaying, holding the other end of the rope, he's cold. You never win. One guy's scared, one guy's cold. That's basically all you're doing.
That's very true.
Right on. Hey, Ty, thanks so much for coming on the show. Yeah, maybe we'll talk again soon on the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿DERtainment podcast. Thanks for sharing your story.
No problem. Talk to you later.
All right, thank you so much once again, Ty Gaenzle, for coming on the show. That was a phenomenal story. Actually, when we cut off our recording here, Ty was sharing some really gnarly wilderness outback in Alaska ice climbing falls and just some gnarly adventures he's been on. So check out that story. I'll have him on the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿DERtainment podcast and talking his pretty incredible athletic achievement in the ice climbing field out in Alaska. So that's the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿DERtainment podcast. We'll have him on. Please subscribe, because once again, we'll cut the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿DERtainment off of Rescue Swimmer Mindset, so it won't be hosted under here anymore. It will only be its separate entity, if you will. So that's the 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿DERtainment podcast, 𝐻𝐻𝐻𝐿DERtainment, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts. Leave a rating review, help that grow, and you can find it under YouTube. We'll post them there, and we always post them there, so that's cool. You get the visuals, you get to see what Ty Gaenzle looks like, so you can subscribe on YouTube and do all that nonsense, blah blah blah. Spotify's the shit. Anyway, thanks again, Ty Gaenzle. Rescue Swimmer Mindset. Once again, we are coming out with the Perfect Form Masterclass. If you want to really get into the nitty gritty, how to swim efficiently. Nobody knows really. Like, the thing is with like these elite military programs, like, people go into it and not really knowing or having a swimming background. And that's why this class is hopefully going to help you guys out a lot. How you enter the water, how your hand makes contact with the water, how you extend your body, how you reach, how you pull, how you kick, the foot positioning, the hip positioning, your back positioning, basically everything that from head to toe, underwater, surface, freestyle stroke, and finning, which is crucial for military operators. So check that out. The Perfect Form Masterclass on RescueSwimmerMindset.com. That's RescueSwimmerMindset.com. Go check it out. Okay, and please leave a rate and review. A rating, 5 stars every time, and a review on the Apple Podcast. Help this grow so we can have Jocko Willing on the show. For the love of God, Jocko, come on the Rescue Swimmer Mindset and tell us some hardcore Navy SEAL stories. Also, join the RSM circle the RSM training circle on Facebook, and hit us up about future podcast guests you would like us to have on. If you guys know a Navy SEAL, you can connect with us and put us in touch with us on there, or you can DM us on Instagram. But the RSM training circle is a great place for the community to collaborate and share content and information as they go through swimmer school, Navy SEALs, PJ Pipeline. And it's kind of cool because we've let it go and we've let you guys interact between each other. Keep it respectful. Keep it PC. Keep it kind of PC, medium PC on the RSM training circle. It's a professional knowledge sharing community. So, yep, talking training and whatnot. So check that on Facebook. All right. Enough with that. Wildertainment Podcast, rescueswimmermindset.com. That's all the advertisement you want to hear from me if you've listened this long. So, toodaloo. Merry Hanukkah. Jolly Christmas. Kwanzaa. What else is there? I don't know. And Happy New Year coming up. Okie dokie. Let's hear your resolutions on the RSM training circle and tell us everything you are going to do for the new year and go pack the gym. Or not, you've been in the gym because you listen to this podcast, but God, I hate the post-New Year gym donkeys. They're just donkeys. Oh my God, such donkeys. And then they just go and they chat. They chat with their friend that also doesn't train regularly. And they just go to the gym and they have a little conversation and they take up my COVID slot. And then I can't work out because they're having the view conversation in the gym. I don't need you to go to the gym and have the view type of conversation about politics or men or women. Just go and get it done. Be better. Rescue swimmer mindset. Goodbye. Vince, tuning out. Merry Christmas.